Welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Let's cue the intro. This is the #1 podcast to learn marketing strategies for your board game. Whether you're just starting on your first game or an experienced designer, you've come to the right place. My name is Nalin, and let's talk marketing for your game. Before diving into our interview today, I wanted to quickly talk to you about the Game Designer Marketing Toolkit. The Marketing Toolkit is a collection of all the marketing tools and information a game designer needs for a successful Kickstarter launch. Inside, you'll find the 6 key things you need to master with how-tos, guides, examples, explanations, and more for your launch, and made sure to stuff it full of value. You'll learn about landing pages, pre-launch emails, advertising, reviews, media and press, your Kickstarter page, and a few other special surprises. You can get the Marketing Toolkit at its launch special pricing this week only at meeplemarketing.com. Thanks for being here, and let's head to the main show. Hi everyone, welcome to the Board Game Marketing Podcast. Today we're super lucky to have Wes Woodbury on the show, and I'm super excited for everything that he has to share with us today. So Wes, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here, Nalin. Thanks for the invite.
Awesome. So firstly, I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit more about yourself and also about your project, Die in the Dungeon.
Well, I am a part-time game designer. I've got a full-time day job that keeps me pretty busy, but I have a lot of fun with game design and even independent publishing on the side. And I've done about 5 Kickstarters. This is my 6th now, called Die in the Dungeon, and it's a solo-based fantasy tabletop board game that is really invested in a dice theme and kind of a fun, lighthearted adventure as a dungeon monster instead of a traditional hero.
Got it. Yeah, that's super cool. Must be interesting to balance a full-time day job with, being an independent designer on the side.
Yeah, it makes for some late nights, and you kind of carve out time where you can in between other obligations and fun times with the family.
That's, it's fascinating to me that you have a full-time day job and you're doing this on the side, because you're able to really corral your community to support you, to be really encouraging, to be even brand ambassadors throughout the campaign too. So I'd kind of love to dig into the marketing part of it. What kind of marketing did you do in the pre-launch stage before you launched Die in the Dungeon?
So before the game launched, there was about 4 weeks of activity for advertisements on Facebook. So that's just, I think we spent about $20 a week just trying to target people that are into fantasy or D&D or dice or any of those kind of themes. It just basically filters into their feeds, and if they're interested, it drags them to a landing page. They can read about the game, and then there's throughout their scroll, there's 3 options to join into the email subscriptions. So that was done for about, it might have even been 5 weeks there. And then beyond that, it was building a Facebook group. I built that about 7 months ago and invited people to try the early print and play with the really, really sketchy initial designs and concepts and mechanics. And it kind of evolved over time. The group has over 500 members now. And beyond that, it was just social posts in different groups on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
Got it. So yeah, you had something going on 7 months ago, and then you really ramped it up 4 weeks ago with the ads. In the early stages of your Facebook group, you mentioned print and plays and getting people involved. Can you tell us more about how you got people to come into your group, what kind of questions you were asking, how you just kind of got the word out so people knew about your group even?
Well, there's 2 or 3 distinct print and play groups on Facebook that I know of. I think there was a new one that Martin had made recently is Print and Play Hideaway, and then there's 2 other groups. So I was part of those, and anytime I do a new game, I will offer it for free in that group, and usually anywhere from 10 to 30 people will sign up for it. And out of those 10 or 30 people, you might get 5 that actually print it and 2 that actually give you feedback. But it's a start. And then beyond that, I will usually reach out to different fan groups that might be interested in my game theme. So for this one in particular, I put the call out on 2 different dice groups and got a couple people there just because the game is heavily invested in that dice theme. and there are many people who love their dice and never get to use them. So that was kind of the sharing point there, is if you have a ton of dice or beautiful dice and you never get to play with them, now's your chance. Try this print and play solo game.
That's really cool. Just finding out about what your audience is looking for and going there. Because I know you also launched some previous games too, like Legends of Novus and stuff. Were these kind of the same audiences, or were just totally completely different according to the groups you kind of targeted?
The audience changed a little bit in the fact that it was more of a dungeon crawl instead of an adventure game, and it was that dice theme that I mentioned. So it was different in that respect, but otherwise, all of my games and concepts are built into that fantasy theme. It's something I'm always fond of and enjoy, and so I'm building what I enjoy as my hobby, and try to reach out to those same kind of communities.
Nice, nice. And so you have, this early traction for when you first started your group 7 months ago. How did you kind of keep everyone engaged? Because going to your group now, everyone is still commenting, posting, liking, reacting. I'd love to kind of pick your brain about that.
Yeah, I mean, some people are scared to share their game mechanics and their art and their overall direction of the game, and fear that it won't be as interesting when it's released, or that people will steal the ideas. And I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I feel that the community thrives on seeing it grow from nothing to what it is. I mean, one of the posts I shared showed my initial pencil sketches with really cruddy looking drawings with dice on them, and then it evolved to Tristram's sketch, to Tristram's art, to the plastic minis, to the 3D models. And people just really emote well with that. They like to see the evolution of the characters or the board or the mechanics. And so anytime something significant changed in the game, whether it was a piece of art or a game mode or anything like that, I would try to share it on that site. And often I'd share it to other sites as well, with a link to this Facebook group. And that's kind of how the group grew, while the main group stayed.
Got it. Wow, that's really cool. A lot of people starting in game design and have that hesitation to share or to just offer, even like print and plays. People think, oh no, if I offer a print and play, will people even come and back my game when I launch? Do you remember back when, were you like that, and then you had like a mindset shift, or were you just always, hey, let's just openly share everything and we'll get our fans that way?
Nope, for my very first game designs, it was always, if anybody was willing to try it, that's where you get your play testers. It's a lot cheaper for them to print and play it than it is for you to build prototypes and ship them out. And so I don't feel comfortable charging people for giving me feedbacks.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to just kind of get your work out there and make sure that, you're getting those super fans of people who are going to print and give you actual feedback. So let's.
Yeah, and the best kind of feedback is if you can get them to do it blind. So many people want to be walked through, they want to be talked through, they want messages back and forth, but really the best feedback you can get is if you made your rule book and you give them the rule book and the cards or the components, and just see if they can actually figure out the game.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So that, because most games are out in the wild anyway, and you won't be there to help people at their game table.
Yeah.
Cool. So, we talked about kind of getting people into your group, keeping them engaged by sharing different artwork, different mechanics, different changes, different evolution. Let's talk about more towards that 4-week mark where you started ramping up with ads. How did you decide on like $20 per week for for those 4 weeks? How did you, filter your audiences? Can you talk to me about just your ad experience there?
Yeah, I mean, I used an experienced advertiser to build that campaign out. That was Andrew Lowen of Next Level Web. And he kind of gave me some insight behind what he was doing. And I feel comfortable that if I were to do a new game, that I could probably do that part as well. But the essence of it is to not use boost posts or to use kind of generic ads. You need to really tailor a couple of specific images that really showcase the art or the components of your game, and have a couple taglines, one for the header and one for the subject, and usually no more than 1 or 2 sentences that don't end up in the famous ... that he described. And those Facebook ads, the reason we started doing them 4 weeks out is you want to start to build that email audience up, but you don't want the email subscriptions to be in waiting too long before you launch your game, because many people, their patience is thin, And if you don't have something to offer them shortly after they get involved in your email, they will end up filtering you into their trash, or just the logistics of Gmail or iCloud will put you into the trash instead of into their actual email. So that was kind of the reasoning behind the 4 weeks out.
Got it. And in these 4 weeks, how many emails did you send out to people on your list?
So once the email list got to over 500, because I'd already had a pre-built list of about 400 people. Once we got to the 500 mark with the newcomers, then I would send out an email once per week with a new graphic, maybe a how to play in one. In another one, it was a video. In another one, it was a character backgrounds. So just some elements of the game that would keep their interest, and just not another post that says, hey, we're going to Kickstarter.
Got it. Okay, so like a variety of content just to keep people excited and just kind of, hey, like looking forward to the next thing too.
Yeah, exactly. And you do end up getting unsubscribes when you post weekly, but those are probably the people that wouldn't have been interested in your game anyway.
Got it. Yeah. And since you've launched so many projects on Kickstarter now, what kind of open rates and click rates are you looking for these emails? A lot of people who come or who are new to crowdfunding just don't even know. They know emails are important, but they're not sure what to look for.
Some people can't come in with blind expectations, but you would have to expect that less than 10% of your backers, of your email subscription list will even have any interest in backing your Kickstarter. Often they're just following it along for the imagery, or they clicked on an impulse and will never look at it again. So if you have an open rate of more than 20%, you're probably doing well. And if you have people back your game more than 5%, you're probably doing well. So out of my 1,000 email subscriptions, I might have only gotten about 50 actual backers for it.
Got it. Okay. No, these are really good numbers to kind of keep in mind as people are building up their email list. But it seems obvious that you're not supposed to just focus on emails, because you really grew your social following and you have almost 1,000 backers on your Kickstarter game now.
Yeah, we just hit 900 this morning, and we're going into the last 3 days. So when I looked at the dashboard, the wonderful thing about Kickstarter is you can see all kinds of interesting data behind the scenes. You can see everybody that cancels, and you can see people that are following. So when they find your campaign and they click the little heart and say they want to follow you, that means that they're going to get an automated email at the 48-hour mark. And for my last major board game, which was Novus, we had 1,800 followers and about 12% conversion. And with this game, I'm absolutely floored. It's got over 4,000 followers, and we're currently at a 7% conversion. And usually you get the jump in conversion within the last 48 hours. So I'm curious to see how this one converts at the tail end, considering there's so many people that seem to enjoy and want to follow it.
Yeah, that's really exciting. I'm excited. I'm excited for you in the next 3 days to see what happens.
Yeah, and one of the things that people look for when they are following you, that means they probably saw your campaign once, and what they want to see when they get to the end of it is how much more got added in because of stretch goals or changes in the idea behind the Kickstarter. So, for example, in this game, we've added in a couple new cards, we've added in a new creature board and standee, and there's a few more things to come, and there's a surprise component that I'm just making sure the cost is right, but I plan to hopefully do an update tonight to show that new component, and should add another level of quality to the game that could entice those 48-hour reminders to jump on.
That's really exciting. So when it comes to, during the campaign, stretch goals is definitely like a marketing method to kind of keep people coming back to your game. I would love to kind of dig into how you planned out these stretch goals, because it's really difficult with like cost, with figuring out how many people come, how to set your stretch goals. So I'd love to kind of just see about where your thought process is for this.
Yeah, you have to have a good relationship, through email anyway, with your manufacturer. And so you need to have a set cost for your base game, and then establish costs that would get added on if you were to add any of these stretch goals, and just kind of keep that moving cost factor into your game. So when I initially did the concept of making the game, it was based on 1,000 units. And if I only were going to purchase 1,000 units, it could only have what I initially showed in the Kickstarter. But as I've seen the growth of the Kickstarter, even though we're not over 1,000 backers yet, the trend proves to me that I'm going to make more than 1,000 units. Plus, there's retailers behind the scenes and post production to make. So I was able to factor in, okay, if I make 2,000 units, I can afford to add this to the game. If I bump it up to 3,000 units, my costs go down, so I can add these more components into the game. And that's how I personally do it. I don't know how others do it, but that's the strategy I use. Is I end up wanting to keep the cost the same by adding components as the production values change.
Got it. So, like increasing kind of the volume and then balancing out production units in that way with
Yeah,
components.
yeah,
Got
or quality, because sometimes you can upgrade the card quality or a finish on a board or whatnot. I think it's more interesting to add stuff, but some people feel that maybe those aren't going to be balanced well enough. But I tend to play test all that stuff beforehand and only include it if I can afford it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, with all these things that you have planned before you launch, how do you roll them out to your backers?
Well, I spread them out over certain dollar values based on how I think they fit in. So certain things cost a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper to make an extra card per game, other than the art. That's kind of the biggest cost, than it is to add a whole creature board. So the new creature board plus standee plus cards didn't come in until I felt comfortable we crossed that 1,000 unit mark. Whereas the other ones I could add in even if we didn't quite hit the 1,000 mark.
Got it. Okay. And when it comes to just kind of like the marketing aspect for during your campaign, can we talk about how this stretch goal fits into your overall strategy for the marketing throughout?
Yeah, it helps keep excitement and engagement with the core backers, the people that were interested in from the beginning or that were part of the Facebook group. They love to see what had existed turn into something more that they didn't really know about. And then it also encourages social shares. And I've done that through some other methods that you've probably heard about on my podcast. But just trying to find ways to keep the game getting shared and talked about beyond just me telling people to share and talk about it, because that gets redundant quite fast.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are curious to understand more about social shares here. Would you mind kind of digging deeper into how you set up those social shares, what numbers and what mechanics you kind of put behind the social shares?
Yeah, I did it in three different ways. The first one is through a social stretch goal, which basically every like or follow or comment or share on all the different, I think I have 5 major platforms that I put it on, will give people pips on dice, which is kind of thematic for my particular game, but other people use points or experience or different things. And so once we hit a point of 10,000, if we can get to that point, I was going to include a bonus 28 card game. So that would give value to everybody who backed it. So that one, we're getting close to the 5,000 mark. I'm not sure if we're actually going to hit that one or not, but I'll be talking about that one a lot in my next 2 updates as we close up the campaign. And there'll even be an option to still get that if we can get the pips after the campaign. And that's something fun to keep some interest as we lead up to production. The second one was through the Dungeon Design Challenge, which was kind of a flop. There wasn't much interest in that because it took a lot of time and energy for someone to want to do that one. But the most successful one was the Character Design Challenge, where anybody who wanted to sketch or draw or color or Photoshop any type of character design, as long as it had the 6 polyhedral dice and they posted it on social media, then they were entered into the contest. They'll get a free PMP of my former Kickstarter deck of dice, and the winner will get their design redrawn by Tristan, the artist of my game, and it will be included in some way, shape, or form in the board game. So that just kind of, there were a lot of great ideas. I think over a dozen ideas contributed and got some extra shares and interest in different groups.
That's really cool. So I like this is just one of those most creative things to get people to just really engage in a campaign. And I would love to kind of understand like how did you come up with this?
Well, many games will offer a special pledge tier that lets you put something in the game, but it comes at a very high cost that's not really tangible and not attainable for many people. So I didn't want to do that in this game. I didn't want people to have to pay for that, but I still wanted it as a way for somebody to be able to have it. So this way people get to show their ideas. And if the campaign had gone extremely high, I would have had more winners. But because I'm at a certain mark, I can't really afford to put much more than one winner in. And so the idea was just, I wanted backer content in the game without being paid for. And that's the idea that I came up with for that. And I know you spoke with Jay on one of your prior podcasts. I had listened to that, and he had some ideas of his own. So if you can find a way to tailor an idea that's unique to your campaign, in my case, it was the dice theme. In his case, it was secrets and hidden characters on different posts, then you really can actually gain interest from it instead of just trying to tell people to share or link.
Yeah, definitely. The tying the creative aspect to get people to come back to the game and just be involved or in the creation of the game seemed to be really, really effective. And again, you have about 12 character designs that are being posted on social media now, just getting that much more, attention for your game out there too.
Yeah, and the other cool thing was once I got all those designs, even though those 12 people may have only shared it once, I can now use that as a non-Kickstarter promotion across the board game groups and say, hey, which of these characters do you like the most? And if people wonder what the characters are for, it'll eventually trail them back to the Kickstarter without me outright advertising it, because that's frowned upon if you do it too much. I think you mentioned the word spammy in one of your posts as well.
Yeah, this is a topic a lot of people, are wondering about. And I think you do this really well because you are able to go into different groups and just offer an insight or some valuable post to not actually, promote your own project, but it does in a way. How do you approach creating these posts for the different Facebook groups that are out there?
It's tricky, and every one of them is a marketing concept in a way. Every post you make, you are advertising yourself or your brand or your game. And so I tried to do it either by using different text with the same image or different images with the same text, or I'll share them on different days. So for example, I have 6 or 7 different videos of people that played the game. And so I would post all 7 of them across 7 different groups, but each of them on a different group. And then a day or two later, I would post them all again, but each post would have been a different video for each group, if that makes sense. So Undead Viking might be on the board game spotlight one day, and I might post it on the Dice Tower another day, and vice versa for Quackalopa for Man versus Meeple. So sharing, not my Kickstarter directly. I'm trying to avoid direct links to the Kickstarter, but just trying to share images and videos and concepts that if people like it, they will find the Kickstarter anyway.
Got it. Yeah. And how do you plan for doing something like this? Because there seems to be a lot of groups, a lot of content that you're able to create for your game with the different reviewers, previewers. How do you kind of plan everything out? Is it like a master calendar for you?
I'm kind of sporadic, so I keep it all in my head, and when I've got some time on my hands, I just splurge and make it happen. I've got too much going on with work and family to have an in-depth calendar program, but I just try to spread it out as much as I can based on my gut feeling, intuition.
That's honestly, that's so impressive because again, full-time job, this on the side, family, and everything else that you do too. Podcast, there's a Facebook group that you run. So props to you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's fun but challenging, and if I didn't love the games that I make and the games that I play so much, I probably wouldn't do it. But I kind of gave up video games and watching movies late at night and stuff like that, and just this is what I do for fun.
Cool, very cool. And I know we just touched on kind of reviews and videos that people have been using to kind of reviewing to previewing your game. Can you talk about more about that process? How did you find these reviewers? How did you kind of narrow down to these reviewers? What was the process like?
This game I kind of felt as like an all-in game for me. So normally I wouldn't go after 6 or 7 different video content creators, but I felt comfortable with this title and where it could go. So about 3 months before my launch, I reached out to each of the people that you'll see on my Kickstarter page and said, hey, I've got this game coming out. Here's the rule book. Here's some imagery. Are you interested? And whether it was paid or unpaid, I made sure they knew that I knew if they were paid or unpaid. So I'm aware you're a paid creator, or I know you're an unpaid creator, and just asked if they'll have time in May to play and post their video. And so some of them said yes right away. Some of them wanted to read through the rulebook first. Others needed payment first. But I just reached out to ones that I know have a good following and a good history. So just basically a good track record. And then Each of them came back to me, and everybody that you see was basically every single person said yes, except for Rado. He's very, very particular and hasn't liked my games yet, but one day I'll get him on board. And then I just stayed in contact with them throughout. When my prototypes were ready, I mailed them out. When my Kickstarter official launch date was ready, I let them know and just stayed in touch. And some of them gave me the video link a couple of days or a week prior. Some of them weren't till the morning of, but it all worked out and everybody was ready for launch day.
Got it. And how did you kind of determine which one had you mentioned good following and good history. How did you kind of determine that when you were looking at all the influencers that are out there and all the reviewers and all the previewers that are out there?
Yeah, I mean, you can always Google top board game podcasts. You can there's a Facebook group, of course, for that as well. And then once you find their page, you watch a few of their videos and see, is that the content creator that's right for my game? You can see how many people watch their videos. So if you look at their last 20 videos, if they get 1 or 2 people watching their videos, probably not worth your time. If they get anywhere from 25 to 100, then that's probably an unpaid previewer. If they get 100 to 500, that should be a low-cost previewer if they're going to charge you. And if they're 500 or more, you can expect that they're going to want some money to do your video. And so I did it based off that and based on their personalities. Like, absolutely love Jeremy Howard and William Brown and Jesse Anderson. They all deliver such great videos. Lance has a whole different take on things, so I like their personalities too.
Got it. Okay. No, that was really insightful about what to kind of look for in terms of paid and unpaid too, and also just kind of connecting with the personality of the reviewer.
Yeah, it was really cool when Jesse from Quackalope did his. He just dived right into the characters and created almost a role-playing experience out of a game that's not a role-playing game, so it's kind of fun.
Awesome. Well, out of all the things that we talked about today, what do you think was kind of the most effective marketing method for your campaign?
The single most effective method is building your group, building a Facebook group, and constantly sharing and learning what they like and what they don't like. Obviously, you have to have a good game, but that's not a marketing strategy. That's a development game design strategy. So for marketing, it's building your Facebook group. Some people say Facebook is dying, but to me, it's the way that you connect with the world outside of conventions, because I've attended 2 conventions in my life, and it was only a very small one locally. I haven't been to Gen Cons or Origins or anything, and some designers will tell you that that's mandatory for success. But to me, it's not an option, and hopefully I'm proving that that is not part of the formula that you need.
I love it. I love that you're, paving your own path for success.
Yeah, the podcast doesn't hurt either, because it helps me get in touch with some of the major other game designers out there who then often share your pages or like your stuff down the road. So that helps too. And the TTS creations and collaboration I've done with people, it's all unpaid, just for fun and to get my name known in the hobby. And then that helps with the shares as well.
Got it. Okay. So you mentioned something just now, sharing on Facebook and understanding what people like and don't like when you do share. What do you kind of do with feedback about just things people don't like?
Yeah, if I ever get a post that says, hey, I've seen your game way too much on this channel, or this isn't the right group for that, often I'll just do an apology, or if the post wasn't too recent or was very recent, I can remove the post, because it's never my intention to over advertised or put stuff in the wrong groups, but sometimes you lose track of things. Like I said, I'm impulsive sometimes, so sometimes I'll post and not realize which group I posted the right image in. So I think other people probably have better strategies for me than that on this particular topic, but I just do what I feel is right.
Yeah, no. Going with your gut is also a really strong thing to follow as an entrepreneur, as someone launching a new product, a new game. So I support that. Okay, so this is kind of just to wrap things up here. Where can listeners just find out more about you, your game, everything else that you're working on, Wes?
I'm everywhere, I think, but so Wesley Woodbury is on Twitter and Facebook. I have a podcast I have called Kickstarter Journeys. I think it's on 8 major platforms. My official board game publishing website is www.thefundamentalgames.com. And otherwise, just look up my game names, Die in the Dungeon or Legends of Novus. They both have their own Facebook groups too.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you for coming on the show and just sharing with us all these insights about your campaign and about marketing. You're, clearly going to crush your goal with 3 days left here. And, I know listeners are going to really appreciate what you have to say.
No, that's great. Thank you for the time. You're doing some wonderful things with your content sharing, all kinds of different posts and blogs and videos and now podcasts. So you're all over the place, and it's great help for game designers like myself. We all can learn different things from each of these.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Wes.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Board Game Marketing Podcast. For daily tips and advice, find us in the Board Game Marketing group on Facebook. See you next week.